Hello, and welcome to another episode of Trends Talk. I'm Sarah Sladek, your host, and I'm so glad that you're joining us. We are doing these monthly talks where I am very briefly putting on the hot seat a notable leader on a topic that's kind of trendy. And today I'm really excited to have Clint Runge here with us from Archrival. And I am telling you, this is the guy. This is the guy to talk to about marketing to Gen Z. And he's worked with many notable brands on advertising campaigns, marketing efforts to reach this generation that's really, straddling these influential years of adolescence and early adulthood. So I'm so excited that you're here today, Clint. Welcome to Trends Talk. And as this format goes, we go through 5 rounds of questions, but you, audience, you are invited to submit your questions because we'll also take those. We are live streaming today, so we're totally off the cuff, having fun. And let's get started with our first question. All right, let's do it. All right, round 1. What current stat or data point best summarizes the need for employers to make room for Gen Z?
All right. This is a good one because talking about Gen Z in the workplace, that's like everybody's tension right now. You can feel it in every organization. How do we deal with these Gen Zers, right? Of course, the Gen Zers point of view is how do we deal with these boomers and these Gen Xers like myself? So look, the stat is that I just grabbed this the other day. I was looking at things that we are on the cusp here where there will be more Gen Zs in the workplace than boomers. This year, at some point, we'll have that cost. It's around 17 million in each category. Take the numbers where you want, but we're getting really close, which is interesting, right? 10,000 boomers a day are turning 65. They're holding on a little longer than they probably should at times, but they're holding on to their positions. They're entitled to do. And now Gen Zs are coming up, and so they're in this situation, right, where the sort of data point around this that makes sense to me is the way that businesses started and the reasons they started, right, largely around boomers' interests, their definition of success, like what does it mean to be successful, is very different than all the Gen Zers that are coming into the workforce. So you have boomers who are running the companies with these systems and processes that got them to be successful. And yet the new workforce coming in sees that and says, I define success differently, and I'm here to work for different reasons. And that's the tension you can feel. It's almost palpable in every organization.
Right. So I have to ask before we go to the second question, as a follow-up to that, what would you say is the key differentiator of how Gen Z defines success as opposed to those baby boomers?
Yeah, it's interesting because generationally they always change. So I actually go back to there's 7 generations that are alive in America. Most of your audience knows that. But our oldest, even like the 95-year-olds, they're still like around, like the silent generation. For them, success is about survival. It's grit, determination, and they built their companies on that. Like they looked down and said, let's. If you look at the world the way it was when they were raised, you would think it was 500 years ago, but it's not. It's just, and so they're about grit and determination. You can feel that in like the oldest companies. Mm-hmm. And then you have boomers who, come along and their definition of success is loyalty, consistency, honor. I mean, they came back from the war. And so they created the corporate hierarchies that exist into the grit and determined businesses that Silence has started. And so they look for that. They look for loyal people. And as soon as the Gen Z is not loyal, they come and go, they dismiss it because their definition of success is consistency, loyalty, honor. My dad went to work for one company his entire life, and he's so proud of it. Okay, right. Imagine asking a Gen Zer today to do the same thing, right? Not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have Gen Xers like me. We come along, and our definition of success is like very materialistic. I want the biggest screen, the most things. It's an image-based thing, and you can look at the movies and music we grew up to see that. And then millennials, it's all about relationships and experiences that you have with those. So you see that with your coworkers. They value culture and their time spent with people. They want collaboration on projects. And then Gen Zers come in, and Gen Zers are like, yeah, all that stuff's garbage. For me, it's about achievements. Like, what are we here to achieve, both at a global level, like what can we achieve, but also very personally, what can I achieve? They're in the collection of achievements. And the more things they collect, the more successful they will feel. And that's very different than their millennial managers or their Gen X or boomer bosses.
Absolutely. We're seeing more purpose come into play. We're seeing more accountability, all of that.
Satisfaction, impact. Like the
Yeah.
language is just so different. You sit down with a boomer, you hear totally different words about
yeah.
success than when you sit down with a Gen Zer and say, what does it mean to be successful? And that plays out, of course, in every aspect of life, but it is maybe the most, you can feel that tension the most at the workplace, because that's where we're all thrown together in this, this
Yeah. This big melting pot.
Yeah.
That we're forced into. All right, let's go to round 2.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Okay, round 2. What are 3 facts most people probably don't know about Gen Z?
Well, this is interesting because there's so many different directions to take a question like this. Like 3 things that people probably don't know about Gen Z. Well, I do actually think a lot of people know a lot about Gen Z. We're sort of inundated with reports and all these things. And I think we have to be very careful about jumping on too fast onto one stat. I find that things are, the pendulum swings a little slower than people usually think. All right, so here's my 3 things. The first one that I think about is, because you think about youth, oftentimes rebellion is associated with youth. And so if you think about rebellion, Sarah, I don't know how old you are, if you're a Gen Xer like me, but
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you think our rebellion to us was, there's like the things that we did and could do and get away with because we didn't have, videos watching us everywhere. Rebellion was very different. And even if you look at boomers, like the things they were able to do and get away with, rebellion just looked so different, And if you were really passionate about a cause, that meant you were burning your bras and, down the street. Like, there's so much going on. But rebellion today, it looks different. I mean, teen crime is the lowest it's been in decades. Teen alcohol use, lowest it's been in decades. Teen pregnancy, the lowest it's been in decades. It's, there's a little more responsibility built in because young adults are growing up older, younger. They just have to. They have the weight of the world on their shoulders now. Yeah. So we didn't have that. We could go break our arms and not worry about the world. So rebellion's changed. And now it comes in the form of recreational drug use. It comes in the form of sleep loss. Honestly, this generation gets the least amount of sleep than any other generation. It's because they're sleeping with their devices, right? First thing you look at before you go to bed, first thing you do when you wake up. You and I probably do that. Imagine you were raised with it, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, media addiction is way up because of that too. And so those, that's like a thing to think about, is rebellion in itself, like the idea of youthful rebellion. Second fact. I go to education. So we think about education. You and I probably think about a school, right? We go to a particular school to learn. But if you ask Gen Z, where do they learn? 72% is where they go to learn pretty much. Boy, we went to a school to do that. And the realization for me is that, the idea of going to a school just to learn is as antiquated as an idea that I have to go to the mall to go shopping, right? Or to go to a movie theater, to watch a movie. All of this stuff is intertwined. Education, entertainment, relationships, it's all streamed on our devices nonstop. And so, if you're in the university or education, you can business, you can get away with this for a little bit longer. But largely, there's a questioning of schools and colleges. Many of the millennial parents who are under debt, right, also are questioning that. And so they ask the hard questions, and Gen Zers are like, I don't know, maybe it's not worth it. So anyway, that's a good stat. 72% say socials are going to learn everything. And the last one, I just find this fascinating. When I go do my talks, there's a section I do about adulting. It's sort of like a coming of age. And like every generation has a coming of age moment, right? And places you go. So, for boomers, it was about going to the roller rink or something, and like making out and drinking behind for us, for you and me, that sense of, and that was independence for them. And where we get our independence, our coming of age independence was with our car key, right? As soon as I got that driver's license, that represented independence for me. So, but now you see that that's not happening with young adults today. they're not as interested in the driver's license because they don't need the independence today is the phone. And so this is more than just a device for communicating. It is a sense of independence. And I find that really fascinating. So I don't need and of course there's more tech and tools to allow me to get around the world today in the cities, but I don't need the driver's license anymore. And that is, I think it was, if you look at the stats, we're about 10% or so less behind. I think only 25% of Gen Zs got a license at the age of 16.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it?
It's like 43% for Xers.
So interesting.
Yeah, our millennials got that, and Xers was even higher. So anyway, I find those three stats kind of interesting. What do you think of those, Sarah?
Yeah, I would totally align with everything you just said, and based on what our research finds too. But I'm going to add one fact that I've heard along the way in research, but that Gen Z creates and consumes more content than any other generation. And I just kind of marvel at that one. I mean, it makes sense, but it's like our brands also allowing and companies allowing Gen Z to help with content creation, and a lot of times the answer is no. So seeing that change
that is fascinating. And you also think about the amount of content that's out there now to digest. Well, it's no wonder there's sleep loss and media addiction, right? Like that just makes it follows.
Yeah.
But it's a dangerous thing because there doesn't seem to be a turning back from that just yet.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the third question, which my bell broke as we were talking. So we're literally breaking norms here. So here, I'll try my best.
Okay, that works.
All right. Round 3. In terms of branding and marketing to Gen Z, what's working? What's not? This is your area of expertise, I know. So let's hear it, Clint.
Okay. I have a lot of opinions on this, so I'm glad we're talking about this. Now, to some of your audience, they may totally disagree with this, and that's fine. But that's what we're here to do, is to stir conversation. So I think that the traditional marketing funnel that we have been sort of taught, whether directly from marketing schools or just in business itself, that traditional marketing funnel, which is awareness, interest, consideration, intent, and finally to purchase, and if you're lucky, loyalty at the very tip of the bottom of the funnel. I think that's totally broken.
Yeah.
And it's been around. I mean, that thing was invented it's like 1898, I honestly think, that thing was first implemented, and we've been sort of following along with the system for well over 120 years now. And I think there's a lot of human nature built into that. And so it's not like it's just totally wrong. There's some truths in there. But I think technology radically changes it. The generation is growing up with different priorities, different influences, certainly the tech, right? And so these paths to purchase are essentially blurred. Okay. So before we would, as a marketing agency, be like, okay, what do you want to do? You want to do awareness. Well, then that unlocks these tools. Oh, wait, you want to do consideration or intent. That's a different set of tools. And now it's so blurred. I mean, a Gen Zer, you watch them and we study them. You watch them say, hey, go make a purchase or get online, and we follow you along. And they go through awareness and interest and consideration so much more quickly than you and I would ever do it. Yeah. It's like they're just like checking out content. Everything's cool. And then all of a sudden, I'm interested in that. And now I'm deep diving and I'm suddenly in this intent and purchase funnel. But you don't have the marketing material available there to do that. I just think it's very broken. So hold that. And then the second part of that is most of our marketing is top down into that funnel, which is to say we create ads, we say such good things about us. And you know what? No one trusts that stuff. Who believes in marketing and advertising? I do it, so I get allowed to say this, I suppose, but I don't think anything we create at the top down level, innately, we just don't believe. This like a month ago, I was at some museum and I was looking at old ads from the 50s and 60s. And, we look at those ads and you're like, oh my God, they believed this stuff. It's so funny and it's so corny because it's so obvious, right? Yeah. And I think that Gen Zers look at the marketing that we do today in the same way. They're like, are you kidding me right now? It's so transparent that you just want my money or what? They're just so much more sophisticated than they were. So I think that the answer to this is absolutely bottom up, right? I think that consumption today is on this, we have written it about as an infinite loop of inspiration, exploration, community, and loyalty. And the way through that is absolutely with people, not with businesses. So yes, you have a business. Yes, you have a brand. You got to make money. But the way to get there, right, is through people. There's this high wall, this barrier to entry. And on the other side of this wall is where people are talking to each other. They're saying, do you believe this company? Do you trust this product? What do you recommend? And it's not played out just in like product review sites and Facebook where you can see everything. It's like in the DMs and Slack channels and text messages. It's all in this dark forest of information. And so you as a business and brand have no ability to get there except through people. And so one of the things that we do at Archrival is we build these brand communities. And that is essentially building it. And it's very transparent. We're open and honest about it. But we basically empower and engage the biggest fans, employees, advocates, and we send them over the wall. And they go and you said it, they create the content, they create the conversations, and they win. They can earn the trust much better than we can. And I think that's how we think about marketing.
Do you consider this kind of peer-to-peer marketing, influencer marketing, both?
The words get blurred, right? Because there's field marketing, influencer. I think it's all of the above. And this stuff has been around.
Grassroots.
We're not making it up, right? Like this word of mouth has always been the best advertising. I just view it more programmatically, which is that we, instead of it being this one-off viral lucky thing or pay to play with influencers, which don't really have the same passion that I would want for our brands, it's an organized effort to say, we're going to bring you into the family. Hey, group of Gen Zers and advocates, we're going to bring you in. We're going to give you access to things because you love this brand. We're going to give you access to things you've never had before. We're going to arm you and teach you. And by the way, we're going to learn from you. You're going to influence and impact the products we create. And in return, you're going to go and be the face and the voice of our brand. And we're going to pay you for it. It's a job. But because they're excited and they believe in the brand, they're very authentic in their conversations. So they do have great influencer followings, right? They do have that, but they just have a lot of credibility, whether it's in the high schools that they're in, or the universities, or or the basketball community, whatever it is that they're in, we send them into. They have great credibility, and that's what matters the most.
That's so cool. All right, round 4.
Okay.
Are we at 4 or 5? We're at 4. Right? We're at 4.
Your game. All right.
All right. How is this generation, meaning Gen Z, likely to forever change work as we know it? You touched on this a little bit earlier. What else do you have to say on this?
Okay. So I think that there are a lot of gatekeepers in business. Okay. And they all have this mysterious conference room where decisions are made, culture is made. Okay. And it's where the next project is greenlit, employees are hired and fired and all these things. And I think that room is becoming more and more irrelevant because I think this next generation sees life through gatekeeperless lens. And anywhere where we as, leaders of an organization try to put up these gates, I think this generation innately sniffs that out and wants to go get through that gate. And if they can't go through the gate because you've locked it, they go around it, they go over it, they create new gates, they hack the system. I think innately they just don't, because 80% of Gen Zs don't trust businesses to do the right thing. Let's take that stat. And so because of that, anytime that they find a gate within an organization, it feels wrong to them. Okay. And it can be and you can take this to any level. I mean, a lot of Gen Zers are advocating to know everyone's salary in the organization. Which, as a Gen Xer, you're like, that's crazy. I would never do that. It makes a lot of sense to them. They want to know how the sausage is made. Are our products sustainable? Are they being ethically made? Are we equitable? Is our board diverse? All of these questions that that businesses are dealing with now. I think it's all because they're the Gen Z's kicking in the gates at work, and you can feel that coming through.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And as I mentioned previously, like that accountability. And I've been hearing from more and more organizations that, gosh, we had a Gen Z in here to interview, and they asked about, well, what is your company doing for climate change? And we were like, not a whole lot. And the Gen Z walked out. So
Right.
yeah,
And
Those
you and I
values.
would never do that because we would value the job more.
Yeah.
And that's what's forever changing. To your question, that's how work is forever changing. All these businesses and brands got into business because they were very good at making a product and wanted to sell it and make money. That's what a
Right.
business is. But now they're also being asked to be like our global and moral leaders of society. And they're just not set up to do that. So of course, climate change wasn't a part of that business's original DNA because that wasn't a priority then. The system wasn't built around that. Versus, a new company starting today by a Gen Z or millennial, has that in its core. It's part of its purpose. And so those businesses become much more attractive. And if you can't name your mission, right, and you can't say, here's the path we're on 30 seconds and how you will affect that, how you will achieve that here, it is no surprise that they would walk away.
I love that comment you just made about, are you a global, and I think you said global and moral citizen of society or corporation of society. I mean, we could go down a whole path talking about what's going on with politics and all sorts of things. We won't, but yes, you're right. Gen Z is calling into question the motives and the values, and they want to align to their personal brand of things. But okay, let's go to round 5.
Okay.
Last one. Here we go. All right, round 5. What trends are you currently watching and advising companies to prepare for?
Okay. Let me think about trends for a minute because trends is an interesting word there. I think that a lot of brands want to be trendy, but the problem is trends move too quickly today. So by the time something becomes relevant, and they've come up with their clubhouse strategy, it's dead and gone, right? And so I really encourage the brands that we work with to not chase what is cool, but really understand why something becomes cool. Why does it become trendy and relevant? And that puts you in a position to create the products and services to meet consumers where they will be, right? Versus where they are today. It's the bigger business you are, it's just hard. It's just hard to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think about with trends is that, and this is an interesting stat for you, that make sure I say this right, 40% of millennials believe that brands create trends. 40% of millennials believe that brands create trends, but only 15% of Gen Zers do. Okay. That's a pretty big swing in a generation.
Yeah.
Now, the reverse stat of that is that 52% of Gen Zs believe people create trends. Okay. 50% of Gen Zs believe people create trends, but only 31% of millennials do. Okay. That's a really big difference. And if you have millennials and, they're really good at what they do and they're very social and they're in charge of the marketing department or whatever, they would tend to say that we will create cool things here as a brand. But if you were a Gen Zer in that same position, you would say, what are other people saying that is interesting and cool? And let's go do that. Right. And that, I think, just understanding where do I believe the source of, I'm using the word cool as a generic term, but cool, relevant, meaningful, add whatever you want, better language in there. I think that's an interesting thing. So I'm watching that and I'm seeing that play out in marketing departments and product development departments in many organizations. The other thing I'm currently watching, this is maybe sets us up for a future talk, but it's Gen Alpha, right? So the oldest is 14 now. Okay, so Gen Alpha, we still kind of think is like our youngest kids, but like at 14, you are on the precipice of becoming a core consumer for some brands.
Right.
And, time flies, right? So like suddenly tomorrow, these 14-year-olds are 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds. And, we're advising right now. What I'm watching and advising is Gen Alpha, because what they believe and how they see the world, just like we said before, they have different things that they're working through, right? And different things they'll be looking for in companies. And we don't know everything yet about them. Still a little time.
Still some time, but it's going to be fascinating, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that we will have I talk about alphas in this talk I give on Gen Alpha. I talk about that they're essentially the next coming of the silent generation. So the same set of circumstances that when the silent generation was being raised exist here. Same situation, of course, advanced in many ways, but very much the same that impacted them, that they'll have a similar life style and belief system that the silent generation did.
Well, they say history repeats itself.
And
So
there you go. There you
stay
go.
tuned. We're going to talk about alpha in the future. We do have an audience question I want to make sure we get to before our time is up. And it is from Abby. Thank you for posting a Q. Hopefully Clint has an A. How do we continue marketing to baby boomers while speaking to Gen Z too? Is there a strategy for using different platforms for different audiences?
It's a great question. I'm separating this generationally, and I'm looking at through these demographics. There's a lot to learn about that. I would also be remiss if I didn't say that there's a lot of mindset built. It's a psychographic as well in terms of being innovative, feeling younger than you are. I think that exists across every generation, and so speaking generationally, but at the same time, there's a thread. Like grandma's playing the same games as like their grandchild. Like they're playing the same games or watching the same, maybe not the same content, but they're have access to the same content. So there's some thread there. Now, in terms of marketing to boomers, I think you really should, because there's so much attention given to Zs, and because younger is newer, fresher. Young tends to drive the cultural purchases all the way up to boomers. But boomers, I can tell you, I've interviewed them, they almost feel a little left out. And so if a company was to really say, we want to come and own this, you totally can. And to the point of the question, can you do both at the same time? Absolutely. I mean, the media fragmentation now is in such a format that you can absolutely speak to boomers, and Gen Zers are likely to never see it, and Gen Zers will never see the boomer stuff. And even if they did, as long as your marketing is built on that same core thread but expressed differently, you're totally fine. So I would continue to do that, but I would use media to separate it, not necessarily the message. I mean, there's an executional difference there, but I would have this, like the core thing that we are about, the core, emphasis and our brand be consistent. Maybe the benefits change, but certainly the media changes. That's how we advise our companies to think about that.
All right, one more audience cue. Can you talk more about Gen Alpha? I hate that name, by the way. You and I, we need to come up with a different name. But anyway,
Great.
Can you talk more about Gen A, how they will mirror the priorities of the silent gen? Is that attributed to wars going on right now, or what would you contribute that to?
Great question. It deserves more than 2 minutes, so let me do my best.
Okay.
Yes to wars, but also economic depression, coming of age, where there's great political conflict. There's turmoil in government. Businesses don't know where they stand on things. All of these descriptions sounds like 2020 to 2024. Also the exact same thing that was happening at the turn of the century of our country. Go read about it. They will mirror the priorities in that they will always be after control. So much, and I see my stream here might be a little unstable, but there's so much chaos in the world, and so many options for Gen Alpha to choose. By the way, most Gen Alphas do not have a favorite. Let's start there. You know why they can't have a favorite? Because there's 72 different flavors of ice cream out there, and they're always trying something new. So they will always be grasping for control, and sadly, which is exactly what the silent generation was about. And sadly, alphas will never get it. That will be their lifelong strife, will be to have control of their data, their life, their direction. And they'll never get it, but it offers up a lot of opportunities for businesses to come alongside them and help get them to places they want to go.
Wow. So on that note, that was fascinating, Clint. I am so glad you were part of Trends Talk today. You deserve a big round of applause from the audience.
Thank you. That was fun. Really, that was fast too.
I know we are moving fast. We're moving like younger generations, right? Doing things fast. Move fast and break things. So yeah, if you want to learn more about what Clint's doing these days, check out Archrival. And also, both Clint and I are on season 3 of Jobs of Tomorrow docu-series, which is currently streaming on Tubi. So you can learn a little bit more about us there as well. And stay tuned next month. I will be talking to Aaron from the Zeno Group. So more on trends coming your way. I'm Sarah Sladek. Thanks for tuning in. Talk soon.